Good evening, everyone. I call to order the virtual study session of the Lakewood City Council on August 17th, 2026 at 7:02 p.m. To connect with the council meeting online, please use one of the following links at either lakewoodspeaks.org or lakewood.co.gov/council videos. For online public comments, you can post comments of any link to lakewoodspeaks.org, our online forum for public comments. That will be left open tonight through 10 a.m. tomorrow for any comments that are related to this evening's presentation. There is also supporting documents for what we will be going through in our presentation tonight as well. If you'd like some additional information, you can go in on that website and select tonight's meeting and you'll find what you're looking for. Will the clerk please kick us off by calling the roll?
Councilors Black.
Here.
I. Cruz.
Here.
K. Cruz.
Here.
Furman.
Here.
LeBure.
Here.
Lope.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Ryan.
Present.
Sinks.
Here.
Sharzai.
Here.
And Mayor Strom.
Here.
Great. Everyone is accounted for. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. All right, welcome everyone to this evening's conversation regarding Title IX of the Lakewood Municipal Code. That's the portion of our code that addresses items around public peace and safety. So what I'll do is we've got a number of speakers that'll be going through different elements of tonight's presentation, but just to give you an idea as to what to expect as we get towards the end, when of course we'll need to give direction to staff. What we will be deciding upon tonight is of the information that we're receiving, are we yes, okay, want to move forward as presented? If not, there are different chapters. You can check in your email, and I believe we've got a list of different chapters in there that we can also refer to if there are elements maybe that we are comfortable with moving forward or others maybe that need a little bit more work or conversation. So just to let you know what to expect when we get to the end. To get us started with the presentation tonight, I would like to hand the floor over to Division Chief Don Alish. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate being here tonight. And I want to do a quick introduction before we start the slideshow to recognize the people who will be presenting tonight. It's myself, Commander Sean Donovan, who you may not have met before. He's a recruiting and training section commander, but he was a patrol commander a few months ago and helped with this process of overhauling Title IX. I also want to recognize Chris Connors here tonight to again join me as last time, reference the issues surrounding the unhoused and how important that is to all of you. I'll also just real quickly say that this has been a major effort for a long time now, as it touches everything from the police department to Parks and Rec to animal control. It really is a comprehensive update. So as we go into this, I want to recognize all the people that came together to make this possible, and also recognize that this presentation is really kind of your 30,000 foot overview of everything, because it's so there's such a breadth and depth to what we're talking about. So obviously we'll start with the presentation and go from there, and we'll start there. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here. If I could just get a quick thumbs up, Mayor, if you can see the perfect. All right, so everyone, we're going to get started with Title IX code updates, and I'm going to mute myself and turn over to Commander Sean Donovan to introduce himself and get started. Slide 2.
Good evening. I'm Sean, Commander of the Recruiting and Training Section. We'll just get this kicked off with our first slide here. Again, top-down overview. A lot of good updates to this to improve consistency, clarity, and bring this up to speed with the current state code. The reviews for staff again went through all of Title IX and identified areas of opportunity and improvement. Covers the ordinances that promote public peace and safety. It really is a holistic revision, which aims to standardize the language, bring that into our modern era, bring the criminal code into conformance with our state laws, and draw more parallels with that, and make necessary updates based on the needs of our community. First, the modernization of language. The recommended change is the removal of any of these gender-based pronouns and titles and outdated terms, and they've been replaced with gender-neutral pronouns, titles, and modern terminology. So here an example, in our CRS and ordinances, it previously said firemen, and it's now going to be updated to firefighter, and you'll see those updates throughout the document. Other grammatical edits include clarification instead of the police agent of the city to a police agent of the city, since we have many of them working and serving our community. More consistency in definitions throughout Title IX to draw those parallels again to our CRS and the updates they've undergone. Definitions include matching language with that through our language for public servants, emergency medical service providers, definitions of deadly weapons, public property, and others. The alignment with Colorado statutes, again, is really going to improve our prosecutorial clarity and reduce discrepancies between municipal and state law. We've gone through significant state statutory changes, and we'll highlight shortly the Colorado Supreme Court decision in People v. Camp, which is a driving factor in some of these updates. But numerous sections reflect updated state definitions, cross-references and penalty structures, which include definitions related to these things here: alcohol, marijuana, controlled substances, assault, and emergency response. Statutory language governing e-bikes, unmanned aircraft systems or drones, hazardous materials and underage possession laws, and state terminology for peace officers, emergency responders, medical facilities, and marijuana-related regulations. The structural cleanup and removal of redundant or obsolete provisions was a component of this. The revisions to remove are provisions superseded by state statute, any duplicative sections, and outdated requirements, which include a wide range of things, but inconsistent penalty schedules, archaic reporting duties, or obsolete powers. Consolidated ordinances and reorganized chapters will help us improve readability and enforcement consistency. Updated penalties and enforcement provisions. These changes will really help our municipal court give clear guidance and enhance consistency with state law. So the penalty ranges have been updated to better reflect our contemporary sentencing practices to ensure consistency. Examples include the monetary fine standardization and adjustment, which is in line with the Camp decision. Clarification around our strict liability offenses and updated restitution provisions to recoup emergency response costs. For marijuana and controlled substances section, they've been significantly modernized to catch us up to speed with, to reflect all the statewide changes to possession limits, improve clarity around some of these issues, such as underage possession, public consumption, and medical marijuana exceptions. It will also clarify cultivation standards for residential grows. Our expanded and clarified public safety regulations will provide clear operational authority for police, fire, and community resources. It will include expanded authority to enforce park rules, fire bans, nuisance regulations, and emergency response protocols. It includes the modern technologies such as unmanned aircraft systems or drones and updated emergency alarm standards, and has clarified rules surrounding those drones, e-bikes, slacklining, boating, wildlife protection, and camping regulations at Bear Creek Lake Park. Really will make it clear as to what can or can't be done in our Bear Creek Lake Park.
All right, thanks, Sean. So the next section here is talking about Parks, Rec, and Arts, and I'm just going to take it because we have so many presenters, but also so many topics. I do want to note that both Jim Hasselgren and Amber Thill are available in the bullpen, if we want to call it that, and they can be called up to answer any questions you may have surrounding the Parks Department. But ultimately, 932, where Parks, Art, Recreation, and Arts come into play, saw multiple updates, including coordinated rules, updated definitions to match operational needs, and more consistent enforcement authority and penalties. So this comes back to some of those same things we've already talked about. Group activities, commercial use of parks, alcohol, unmanned aerial systems or drones, slack lines, for example, e-bikes, wildlife boating, storage, and also camping at Lakewood Park. They noted there were some slight changes to like the hours when you had to be out of the camp, et cetera, et cetera. These updates provide park rangers and police with clear enforcement tools while improving public understanding of permitted and prohibited activities. One I want to call specific note to is the recommended change in definition here. So one thing we've noticed as we work through our current ordinances in the public parks is we did not have a good definition of a shelter and also reside or dwell. So we, in review with legal, reviewed this to define any shelter as any tent, tarpaulin, lean-to, sleeping bag, bedroll, blankets, or any form of cover or protection from the elements other than clothing. And then also define reside or dwell to include conducting such activities as sleeping or the storage of personal possessions. So that would be added to the definitions section of 932 as it relates to parks and public spaces under Community Resources Authority. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chris Connor, who should be coming online now. He's going to speak through some of the things we talked about last time. If you find some of this duplicative to our last study session, that's only because we want to give context here for everyone who's joining us for the first time on this topic. And we have worked through some additional information surrounding the ideas that we brought forth at the study session last time, including the cool off periods and also some more information on permanent encumbrance zones. So with that, Chris, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Connor, I'm the manager of Housing and Thriving Communities. You, as Division Chief mentioned, will recall a lot of this from a recent study session conversation that we've had, but hope to be additive and look forward to receiving your questions. So much like we discussed before, we have interest and need for new tools in the box to maintain the viability of our public spaces, and how the policy making would look like for that would be the proposal for adding a new ordinance into the nuisance abatement zone as a new ordinance for the city. Language is important here, so I do want to look at the term nuisance as being coined here in terms of harm, not so much an irritant or bother that would be of the people there, but the harms that manifest in communities due to encumbrances and encampments. So we would propose adding an ordinance, nuisance area restrictions, to enhance the city's nuisance abatement tools by creating structured, repeatable processes to address chronic nuisance conditions in defined areas. So key term here being a structured process for that. It would strengthen the larger Title IX's ability to respond to persistent impacts in public health, safety, and importantly, access, and then integrates nuisance abatement into the overall enforcement framework of Title IX in ways that are improved, in ways that are predictable, which is very important, scalable, and legally defensible. So looking at current tools and current situations, before I get into the tools that Lakewood City engages with, I do want to cast a nod to there may be instances when a tent or encumbrance would be removed outside of city involvement, and that these occasions can happen without any process or posted order, and typically are completed by private property owners when they are responsible or able to clean public right-of-way areas. So you look at some circumstances in the city of Lakewood where from curb to right-of-way, curb to sidewalk, so essentially talking about tree lawn areas and such, oftentimes it's the responsibility of the property owners of those adjacent areas to maintain the order and viability of those spaces. And there would be no process where that private property owner would need to provide a posting or could provide a lawful order. So if there's any encumbrance in those areas, at will, that private property maybe removing those and disposing of them. I think it's important to mention, just in case there's feedback among constituencies that say, hey, I left for a minute and I left belonging here in a tree lawn. When I returned, it was gone. The city's not doing its diligence or share. It could be an instance where a private property owner had taken action there. But for when the city's involved, when the public's involved, our current tool revolves around individual enforcements and postings, so single camp and tent postings. So these become problematic in some ways, and they would remain within the toolbox, but it has limitations. So it only applies to individual specific tents and encampments that are tagged at the time of that posting. So when that agent is on site passing through that area. So we may have an agent that goes and in this instance, representation would affix a posting to that tent in the image. If it was abandoned, if there was somebody there, they would be, of course, engaging verbally and also offering the posting in person. But once that agent is gone from site, if someone were to come in and place another structure in that area, it would not be part of that posting or notice. So any tent that shows up afterward and cannot be associated to the owner of the previously posted tent, it would need to be posted individually and individually. There is no ability, finally, after the posting has expired and that structure has either been removed or taken from the property, there currently is no ability to prevent that tent or encampment or item from returning to the same area immediately. So within the next hour after being remediated. So this creates problems in our ability to maintain the viability of those spaces in an ongoing fashion. So the proposed addition allows us to approach encumbrances and encampments geographically. So it would apply to all encumbrances in an area that exists, the area that is posted when the signs are posted, and when they show up during a posting period. This helps address major constituents' concern and the immediate return of encampments, because it would include a cool-off period following that cleanup for the immediate lawful order to take down an encampment or removal of the property within that space for up to 6 weeks. It might not be 6 weeks, but it could be up to that duration. This sign, I want to make sure folks are aware that these are not signs currently being posted in the city of Lakewood. This is a model representation of what that sign, what that posting could contain. The only thing that would be additional to this sign is a sign posting would always include a visual mapped representation of the posting area. But the information would include the date that the sign went up, the date that it was posted, the date that it would be cleaned and cleared, as well as the duration of the cool-off period afterwards. So area postings, cool-off periods, how will it work? This chart provides a kind of linear fashion over time about how we would utilize this tool in the field. So first, an area may be identified, and the discretion on that would be the chief of police or the designee for cleanup. These areas and identification of these areas would be because they have significant number of camps and encumbrances that span an identifiable geographic area. So we would look for a continuity of camp structures within an area. So you think about a block area that might be encumbered, right, with multiple different structures or items. And or that the area has had a known history of reoccurring encumbrance activity despite efforts by the current community action team in LPD to provide navigation services to encampment occupants and to remediate the area. So this is when the sign from the previous slide would go up with that mapped geographic area. So there would be static messaging in the area, identifying the boundaries of the area, and that has been identified for cleanup and would need to have all the structures removed by a particular date. So city staff will post the perimeter of that area with the signage and timeline info for posting, cleanup, and enforcement. And as they're posting those signs in an ongoing way, they would reinforce that through verbal engagement of people within that space as well. So during the time that the sign is posted, that's when we would have the ability that this is where structure really helps us. So we've carved out a time when we can intensify our navigation and outreach engagement specifically in that area and lead up to the cleanup remediation. So navigation and outreach services during this time are intensified within that posted area for multiple days to identify people by name and what their needs are, connect them to available services, and help them seek alternatives to unsheltered homelessness, help them seek access to the navigation center, etc. This also helps us approach that challenge of we may be there on Monday, but somebody may arrive to the site on Wednesday, right? And we would be there with enough frequency and presence to be able to capture them throughout that period. Our sense is that different area postings may require different levels of intensity, but our thought is the minimum period would be a 3-day period of this intensive navigation and outreach style. So 3 business days of consistent engagement in that area zone. So following that, we get up to that day, right? The day where we've posted, and this is when we need to have this area cleared. That day would be the cleanup and remediation, would begin a period of cleanup and remediation. So after the posting period passes, the area is cleared and cleaned by city contractors. We are doing our diligence to assure to the best of our ability that all items of personal significance and importance are retained. We're doing that during the entire process of navigation and outreach, encouraging people to reserve private properties that are important and make sure that they're protected as well. This could be a single day of cleanup remediation, or it could be a multi-day operation, but it would occur within a 7-day period. The reason that we need the multiple days for cleanup isn't always that there's the scale of cleanup activity, but it helps us mitigate for variables such as weather or such as scheduling that might interfere with the ability to coordinate our contractors alongside city staff to do those cleanups. So that leaves us with an area that folks in possessions have vacated and is clear at that point. At that point, we would replace signage for posting because we have passed that posting and completed that cleanup. And we would post new signage advising that the area is in that cool-off period. So upon completion of cleanup and remediation, we would keep that space clear. And the expectation would be that no new structures would identify that space, no new encumbrances would identify to that space, and that LPD agents could give lawful order immediately for those possessions to either be removed or to remove them themselves. So this would be one way that we would newly approached zoned or geographic areas that are encumbered and encamped when they're interfering with the viability of the public space. Second way that we would do that is we would propose to enact a permanent encumbrance zone. So this would allow the city to define locations or areas as permanently protected from encumbrances. This results in much like the cool-off period, but in a permanent ongoing way, immediate removal of any encampment or encumbrance within that area. There's a lot of questions to continue exploring to this, a lot of practical questions, as well as legal considerations that need to be determined on this, such as how do we choose an area or how do we choose a location? How large is it to be, the proportionality of the area along with the nexus of its impact for encumbrances, budgetary needs to be able to implement it as well. What we've represented here in this map, again, much like the signage, I want to be very clear that this is not a current permanent encumbrance zone. This is not necessarily the place where we would land on what a zone would be like, but this is kind of a model of what that might look like if a permanent encumbrance zone was established around the shelter use of the navigation center. So we had talked, I think, in the last study session about conceiving maybe a quarter-mile radius around the navigation center and exploring that. This representation is probably about an eighth of a mile radius within those blocked area sections. And so within the shaded green section there, you would anticipate, again, static messaging, so signage that would get posting throughout that area that advises that personal belongings and encumbrances may be immediately removed from that area and cannot remain, as well as ongoing enforcement of that. Then, all right, this is a slide where I'm kicking it back to Division Chief Alish. So thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So then we brought this up last time, but we want to visit it again. So this is including City of Lakewood property in the trespass ordinance. So this here is the drainage along West 13th. We're looking like from the 11th Avenue North area. And currently our trespassing unlawful, it states only private property, not open to the public, posted with the signs, can be enforced with immediate trespassing, showing that people aren't welcome there. Well, the city has many pieces of public property not meant for public use, including unimproved drainages like this that you see here, vacant lots, etc. These areas aren't planned. They're not planned parks. They're not maintained trails. They're not, groomed and kept for people to visit frequently. And so the goal is that the city could say, in places where we've determined that it's not designed for recreation or other use, we can prohibit people from being there. And I know for some on this council, you've asked this question directly about this space, and this highlights that need to consider that. Simply adding public property to 9660010B2 would remedy this, where we could say, hey, it's City of Lakewood property, but no trespassing due to the nature of the property itself and the intended use or lack thereof of the property. Finally, I want to move over to animal management and welfare. I want to note here that our supervisor, Dave Lewis, is available to answer any questions related to the animal sections. He's available in the bullpen as well. And Dave's worked directly with legal to work on these changes. But basically, Chapter 9.16, cruelty to law enforcement animals, saw a major redefinition to modernize in accordance with the ordinance and bring it into conformity with state statute. Additionally, animals running at large and lawful saw multiple updates, including multiple consistent enforcement authority, or more consistent enforcement authority, my mistake, with updated language and an expansion of that ordinance. And then finally, for wildlife under 9.36, saw a change to bring nuisance species laws into compliance with state statute. So anywhere that we were out of alignment with the state, we wanted to try and bring us into alignment because it creates better clarity for the resident. To know that if they see something that's legal at the state level, we would like to see it be legal at the Lakewood level as well, where appropriate. And that right there is an extremely fast run through, but with the idea that we want to give plenty of time for questions and to dig in wherever you felt necessary.
Thank you so much for all of that. I know that was very brief and yet multiple years in the making. So for everybody, as you said earlier, Division Chief Alish, everybody that played a hand in this, thank you for all of your time and dedication to much reading and thinking and research. So with that, council, I would open it up. Do we have any specific questions tonight? or unspecific questions? So the question would be that, Councilor Lowe?
Finish your thought, please, Mayor.
Well, I was going to take us to what I had said is going to be where we need to start deciding things tonight. So I would imagine your question might be before that, though. So go ahead.
Sure. A couple, I was just looking through the red line that got posted on how the nuisance abatement zone is defined. First, thank you, Chief Alish and the LPD and Chris for the characteristically thoughtful way that you're going about this and sort of really thinking through the angles of how we do this. I think, obviously we want to do this in a way that's really intentional and planful. This is, we want to get this right. So thank you for the thought that's clearly going into this. In terms of how this quote nuisance abatement zone is designed, so one small thing right now, it says the chief of police, the director of sustainability, or their designee. Don't we usually just say the city manager or their designee? I mean, isn't it a little bit awkward to sort of have two different sort of officials in the city that can designate these? And wouldn't it be cleaner to just have one?
I think there are other places, it's rare, but we do have other places where like the code enforcement supervisor or the building department can do it depending on the workflow. But I'm not opposed to having a more of an umbrella term, and we can take that back to legal and look at that for the next rendition of this if we just want to say a higher level, and then that person designates to the appropriate designee below that.
It's not the biggest issue in the world, I imagine. It does seem to set up a hypothetical situation where if the two officials actually disagree about the designation of an abatement zone, I don't anticipate that would happen right now, but that was why I thought it could potentially theoretically get sticky. Timing on part B, posting required, timing governed by city policy. Unless I'm missing it, we don't right now. We don't have like a defined period. Like it says, prior to abatement, police agents shall post notice. Sort of the flow chart that Mr. Connor presented to us. But I don't believe there's sort of like a minimum amount of time that has to happen before abatement begins. Am I misreading that?
Yeah, no. So what we're doing is our current city policy, for single encampments is 24 hours. In that case, where we go out and personally serve a tent and say 24 hours from now you have to do this. What we're saying is we're reluctant to codify a specific date range because, especially if this is a large encampment that's affecting multiple people, if we have to wait a full 7 days, that can create an issue in lag time to be responsive to the constituency. So the thought was if we committed to a minimum of 3 business days. So if we start on a Friday, obviously without navigators being there Saturday, Sunday, we're not going to say those days count. But then Monday and Tuesday would allow us then maybe by Wednesday we move to cleanup. So the idea is we want to look at that more as a matter of policy than we do, having it codified, because if we find that there's too much of a lag, we want to be able to adjust within policy as opposed to having to come back to this body for that piece. But that's why we mentioned the minimum of 3 business days, because we thought there has to be a minimum commitment where we're doing that intensive outreach. Chris, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I agree with that. I think it's important to kind of set that floor, but we could certainly extend from there based on size of encampment area and our ability for navigators to effectively do the outreach in the area. So if you're dealing with a small geographic zone that you're wanting to address, it may be 3 days, but if it was much larger, we wouldn't want to only commit 3 days, right? We'd want to be sure that we're doing our absolute diligence to meet and address everybody.
If I'm understanding correctly, though, the plan is to sort of lay that out as in policy, not in the ordinance. So I don't think minimum of 3 days appears in the ordinance. Is that right?
Correct. That currently does not, but that's what we were thinking is a good starting zone for the policy, to say basically like a minimum for an area restriction of minimum of 3 business days of outreach will occur prior to any cleanup occurring. So that was kind of where we were going. But again, that was more for discussion with this body instead of codifying it to get your feedback.
I could certainly imagine members of the community who just read the ordinance saying that sounds good, but if I just look at the ordinance, there technically, in terms of what's allowed in the ordinance, there's nothing that prevents, let's say a future Lakewood Police Department or a future city staff from deciding that 4 hours is sufficient and then doing it. So I guess I'm curious what my colleagues think, but at first blush, my inclination is to set like an absolute minimum in ordinance that you can certainly go above, something like at least 24 hours or 48 hours or something. I mean, with the understanding that it will often be more than that, but something that sort of says there's in ordinance like a minimum amount of time that the signage has to be posted before abatement occurs. I mean, would that raise? It seems like your intent in rolling this out is to always ensure that there would be that period. I mean, would that create complications in terms of enforcement of this if we put sort of a guaranteed minimum explicitly in the ordinance?
I don't think so. What I'll do with that one is we'll take that back to legal as we craft for next edition, because I think I'm hearing you that you would like to see a bottom level floor. One thing we do want to say with the understanding, because we always want to have clarity around this, is where that bottom floor one occurs. Let's say someone set up an encampment in the second lane of Colfax. That's going to be immediate removal. So I just want to lay that out there for everyone. But obviously, to your point, if you said, hey, as a council, we feel like we should have a codified floor, and that would give the community a feeling of, kind of a confidence surrounding a minimum level of service expectation, we can definitely bring that to legal. And if you as a group say, we would like to see a minimum of 24 hours, that's your prerogative, and we'll do what you request.
Okay, I'm curious what my colleagues think, but I mean, I will indicate that I think if we're going to do this, given this is a significant policy change, a minimum, committing an absolute minimum floor just makes sense to me. I see other hands. Just final question: what during the 6-week cool-off period? So it says during that period, a person who, quote, places, stores, or maintains belongings, etc., in a posted area during the prohibition period commits a municipal offense. But I mean, I assume that there's also the potential for abate. Like if someone does put a tent during that 6-week period, like someone would come in and remove it more or less immediately without notification. That's part of the, or is that not correct? Is that the intent during that 6-week period?
I think the intent during that 6-week period is obviously situationally dependent, but if we arrive and someone's just setting up or is occupying it, we would want to give them a reasonable amount of time to vacate and make sure they're aware and understand the violation that's occurred, and talk to them about the fact that, did you see the signs when you walked by them? Are you aware that you're in the cool off zone, et cetera, and there's discretion in whether we cite or not. But yes, ultimately the goal is to create that cool off period for that neighborhood, as we would quickly work to either have that encumbrance removed and if absolutely necessary, through our discretion, if we had to cite that person, if they were a repeat violator, et cetera, we would have that authority then.
I think what I'm getting at is I'm a little confused about the distinction between the 7-day abatement period and the 6-week cooling off period. I mean, they seem to me to both be periods where you can't camp there and there's no sort of prior notification required, and you can come in and do more or less immediate abatement. So I'm a little puzzled by the fact that it sets up this structure where there's a 7-day period where you can do abatement, then a 6-week cooling off period where you can sort of act more or less in real time when in camp. I mean, it feels to me like in practice that's really going to be just one long period, but perhaps I'm missing something. Like what's the legal distinction between the 7-day cooling off period and the 7-day abatement period, I should say, and the 6-week cooling off period?
Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think how we think about that is that 7-day period is more of the limitation on us to make sure that we come through to do the final cleaning of that area and determine that the cleanup has happened and it is done. And it's from there that the 6-week period would occur. But you're right in the sense that essentially turns into a 7-week period when LPD could come in and give an immediate lawful direction that you cannot place encumbrances here in the area. The place is to be cleaned. Bear in mind that practically on the ground, the interest is always to be as nimble as possible to make that cleanup happen on the early side of that. The 7 days is what gives us flexibility for unknowns about what may be happening anytime during that week. So again, If it's scheduling contractors, a contractor calls out and we need to reschedule them to the area, we can do that within 7 days. If there is rain or inclement weather that comes through that would interrupt the cleanup time, we could reschedule that cleanup for after that weather pattern. So mainly that's the limitation on us. We don't want to be able to just say, once folks are out, we don't have to do anything and just move into that cooling off period. If we miss that 7 days and we haven't done the cleanup that we've committed to, then we would need to start a process all over, and there would be no 6-week cool off period happening because we hadn't hit that cleanup within that week, within that 7-day period.
I understand what you're saying. All I'm saying is when I read the ordinance and the way the 7-day abatement period and the 6-week cooling off period is defined, at least to me, it's not obvious what the legal distinction between those two periods is. It's as written, it feels to me like the city could still decide to hire a contractor and do abatement even outside that 7-day window, but during the 6-week cooling off period, because you're not allowed to camp there. And I get what you're saying. It just, I mean, if the idea of the 7-day cooling off period is to make explicit that the city is committing to do cleanup within 7 days, it kind of feels to me like we should say, instead of may enter the posted period to do abatement, shall enter the posted period to do abatement. As written, it's a may, so we're allowed to do it, but we're also allowed to do it during the 6-week period. It's not, I mean, I get the design. I guess it seems to me like these two periods, the difference between the 7-day period and the 6-week period is not obvious to me legally as written. And I feel like if this, as this is finalized, it would benefit from that distinction either being sharpened or perhaps just collapsing and saying there's really either a 6 or a 7-week period where you're not allowed to camp there and abatement can happen. I mean, if that's the intent, then I kind of think we should just say that.
Yeah, and I think, sir, maybe the way to do that, and we can go back again and sit down with legal who authored the original proposed text, is to your point, if it feels like it's blending, but at the same time, what we're trying to say is we post it, we do our outreach, and then this is the time where we come in and we are going to clean. And then our hope is during the 6 weeks is that it remains unencumbered, but will only come back as necessary. It's not going to be a cleanup operation. So to your point, if that feels a little murky, we can look and see if there's a way to better define those. But the concept is what we're trying to say. I think where Chris is going is we're kind of committing back to the community. Like once the initial period has passed, we will make sure this gets done in 7 days for the community. And it also gives some clarity to the unhoused to say, once this period comes into play, they are coming to clean during this time. Because sometimes what we'll see is people will play the edges and say, well, let me see if they show up. Oh, they didn't show up because of rain, or they didn't. So I'm going to stay a little longer. And that creates this odd zone where no one really knows what's going to happen and when. So we just want to be very clear on our time boundaries. But yeah, definitely. If you think that we will take that back. We have legal on now listening. We'll take all the notes and bring that idea forward as well. If you think that works.
I'll yield the floor, but if that's the intent, it might be as simple as just changing may to shall in the 7-day period. But perhaps that would do it. But
if we have Attorney Patrick Freeman would like to weigh in on this.
Mayor, I think Patrick's just standing by for to weigh in, but perhaps not yet.
I don't need to weigh in on any of this. I just didn't know if I was going to be needed. So
right.
That's fine.
All right. Councilor Lowe, were you done?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. I just have like 2 process questions and then just a couple of technical questions. I will just start off by saying, this is a giant code. I can only appreciate how much cross-team work went into putting this together. So thank you all and those who are involved who are not represented here tonight for all of the intentional work on this. 2 process questions. One is like, what would be the timeline, do we think, for this coming to council after the study session? I'm primarily asking because I know it is pretty customary for us that like if something is not majorly raised in a study session, sometimes it's a little bit harder for us to deal with those amendments on the dais. Unfortunately, we didn't get like the actual revisions of this until 20 minutes before the study session today. And there's a lot in here. So I just want to like make sure that we're all on the same page about kind of what the timeline is, how we can socialize this with our constituents, and how we can understand some of the themes that aren't as captured in these necessarily shortened bullet points, but that are going to be important to people.
Yeah, so that's one. If you're saying, can we have some more time to review the breadth and depth of this document as it exists? Yeah, absolutely. So I will have to lean back on the city clerk's office, and we will have to look at what the timing and the cadence of this is. But if there's a need, given the depth and breadth, to make sure there's plenty of time for this, we don't want to subvert that at all. We want you to have the necessary. So I think that's a question where I can connect and we can get you an answer back once we have a chance to look at your upcoming calendar and what would work best, and take that note down that you're like, given the breadth of this, we have to have some time to digest it. And I'll have to get back to you on the exact timing.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would, go ahead, Mr. Goldstein.
Yeah, I'll just say at the earliest, we would be looking at after the budget. So it'd be November, December timeframe at the very earliest, and it might be further out than that. So there's going to be plenty of time to socialize it. I absolutely understand the concern about it's a complex code, and you want to give yourselves and the constituents the time to really do a hard read on the red line and get that feedback back to staff so that, you know, we could be prepared with options. But I think that should be enough time. Also, it may be more than that. It might not, given other priorities, make it back in November, December. So it could be even Q1 27.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then Mayor,
to be clear, what you were looking for, are you looking for potentially an additional study session, or are you just talking about longevity between tonight and when it would come forward for first reading?
Yeah, I think the latter portion, I don't necessarily think we need another study session. I do know we like to get major issues out now. I just am gonna signal for myself, like I didn't have the things I needed to be able to do that before today. So just wanted to signal that to you, Mayor, and to everybody that I think that there are probably other issues than what's being highlighted that are going to come up in this. And then I think the second process question, that one doesn't matter. We'll work through all of the issues, and I'll learn more about how we're going to talk about the up or down on what we want to move forward. So I guess my questions are, number one, for the parks update. For kind of the redefinition of shelter and reside and dwell, I noticed having a blanket sleeping are updated in that. Like, what would be the practicalities of enforcing somebody taking a nap in a park versus an unhoused person residing? Like, what would be the practicalities of enforcing that?
I think what we're looking for there is a more comprehensive definition of what describes, because currently the camping ordinance that affects parks, the camping definition itself does not define any of those items. So when it comes to be able to enforce that, in reality, it can get problematic downstream for the municipal courts. So what we're looking to do is help define that. For one example, you'll find is we actually got this from a CML presentation from another jurisdiction. We had already taken some items out of that. And if you're like, okay, well, the blanket one seems nebulous to me, where can we go on this? We're trying to get a broader definition so we can at least make sure an actionable ordinance. But at the same time, to your point, we already took one out where the other ordinance had eating in it. And we're like, so you can't have a barbecue? That doesn't make sense. So if there's some of those, as you look through it, we can discuss that definition. And if we say, hey, we don't like this element or that element, that's something we can look at.
I appreciate that. There may be like a line at which there could be some specific words that we could take out. But to me, I think just a maybe fundamental issue with redefining the definition is just necessarily there are similarities between what somebody brings to a park to have a party and what somebody has with them as items, right? And so I'm just concerned about the implications, not assuming poor intent, but of potential either perception of or actually discriminatory enforcement.
I appreciate you bringing that up. And one we had already discussed is we want to make sure we don't include if people are going to a soccer game at Adambrook and they want to put up one of those shade structures, when you see all the teams gather around for a full day event and they're just looking for shade, we want to have a way to make sure to carve out where necessary. So we were looking at that, saying that we could include a carve out that says any scheduled or permitted event, it shall not apply. Or for example, at Bear Creek Lake Park on the beach, anywhere where allowed by sign. So like at the beach, it would say shade structures allowed, because we know people like to have those to spend all day there. So that's something that we would want to look at.
Okay, that's helpful. We'll have more discussion.
Sounds good.
My second question, so regarding the permanent encumbrance zone piece, I know Councilman Lowe was just kind of digging into that. I just wanted to ask, and also if this is like getting into an area that we can't talk about in study session, we need an exec session about, like, okay with that too. But in doing some research on this, like, I know Denver had a lot of legal challenges around their permanent encumbrance zone and enforcement that went different ways based on different courts, but that I think would just love to know how any of that was taken into account, or if that's something maybe we further need to discuss in an executive session.
So I can add what I can, and then if legal needs to add in, they can. But that's one reason we had the questions remain section, because a lot of what happens will depend on what you all think is a good strategy and what we kind of work through as a staff council process. So for example, if we do locations based on specific properties, like if you did one just around the NAB Center, we have to look at the legality of that, right? Like, okay, if we just individually pick out sites that we want to do this for, what's the legal implications? What can we and can't we do, et cetera? If you did it based on historical trends of areas within the community that have seen an overwhelming saturation of the problem compared to other areas, that would have different legal implications. And then going further than that, the scale of the protected area, right? If you do a radius, who defines how big that radius should be, and what was the standard by which we chose that radius? All those have legal questions that we need legal to answer. So I think to your question, the answer is there's still a lot of questions surrounding that. And if you guys say, we like the concept, but we want to flesh it out more, and we need to answer some of those questions surrounding what locations, where, how big, and why, then we have to sit down with legal and go, okay, if their intent is they really want to put an encumbered zone around, shelter serving facilities, we need to take that back with legal and brainstorm that and make sure there aren't any of those concerns that maybe Denver came up with. If you come up with a different idea on this, that could have different legal implications. So that's why we left it pretty wide open right now. And then to your point, Counselor, if you need to go in executive to discuss this further, that's beyond my knowledge area. So.
Okay. Thank you. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Counselor Black.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for putting this together. I have a lot of questions still on various pieces of this, but I don't want to burden this council or all of you with, another 40 minutes of me kind of digging into the weeds. So I think where I'm going to go instead is to say, tell me, with these new ordinances specifically related to our unhoused populations, you are looking for us tonight to sort of weigh in on if we like the tenor and the idea behind this. And then rather than me asking a bunch of questions about permanent encumbrance zones, we're sort of going to be giving you the directive to go back and sort of figure some of these out and then come back to the table with a more solidified version of this. Is that sort of the next steps?
Yeah, I think for those specific things, and that's why we called them out by slide, that's what we're kind of looking for. I know we kind of presented it last time, but again, now we're coming with an idea kind of more, written out for you all to see what it might look like. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're looking for that. And then that goes back to Councilor Cruz's, idea of, okay, what about the legal issues? So what we're kind of saying is, okay, how do we feel about the cool off periods and the signs? So, Councilor Lowe brought up some issues with that we can go back to. But I think what we're looking for, and I'll open this up to the city manager and also to anyone else who wants to weigh in, is we're looking for just that kind of like, what's your temperature feel on this? I know there were some public comments surrounding encumbered zones that we have to be aware of, and some thoughts we have to be thoughtful there as well. So I think that's kind of what we're looking for, is now that we continue to present these, what's your feel as a body on where you want staff to go, and what of these elements would you like to see?
Okay, this is all really good to know, because again, with the permanent encumbrance zones in particular, I have many questions, but I think I'll hold off on some of those. So if that is true, then would it also not be true that if this body has some appetite for staff to look into some other opportunities or options related to our unhoused population, that y'all are going to be doing this research and sort of conducting more kind of cost benefit analysis on these different policies that you've suggested, and perhaps council might have some other directives around our unhoused population that we might see as a priority that could be potentially worked into some of these and would come back. So I'll just be candid and say specifically, I know there's been some appetite from members of the body to research things like camping zones in certain areas, and would now be the time for us to sort of bring that piece of it up to say, also, as you're looking at permanent encumbrance zones or cool off periods, this is another piece of the puzzle that we would like more information on.
I think what I would say, Councilor Black, for that is when we're looking at scope right now, we are looking at the Title IX rewrites to support this. So what I would ask there is we should obviously have those considerations, but any considerations surround any further talk or staff direction to look at like a approved camping zone or other supportive options should probably be viewed as a separate but parallel line to this goal, because this goal really just has to reflect around Title IX and what we want to do about the public safety elements. That goal has to do with more of how do we want to continue to improve resources for those with housing insecurity or those who are experiencing homelessness. So that's how I would view the division right now, is we should really stick to what are we doing as far as Title IX and the Title IX rewrites. And that's why we brought these to you, because they would be in Title IX as part of that rewrite. So that's why you kind of see this odd bringing of what we talked about at the housing and homelessness study session into Title IX, because it fits in there. Does that help?
It helps, but just kind of a final clarification question for me. And I apologize. You know a lot more about Title IX than I'm sure I do. So help me understand a little bit more, because when I hear things like, expanded authority to look at, tackling our unhoused in parks, or, a thing like a permanent encumbrance zone or a cool off period, to me, there are other issues related to our unhoused population might fall into that. And then I totally get what you're saying about this is Title IX and this is different from Title IX. But at the same time, where my head goes, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is, if we're researching sort of ways to sort of envision how we're going to approach our unhoused population, could it not be more efficient to sort of embed some of those things that council wants into that research, even if it doesn't strictly apply to this? But perhaps I'm wrong here.
I think, and then I'll open it up to anyone on this panel who wants to weigh in, but I think what I was saying, and if you'll go back to when we presented last time, I said, I like to view things as scales and not as a pendulum. What we're trying to do here is say, let's look at some things that will help bring the scales in line here. And what you're talking about is things that would help bring the scale the other way. So as we balance, I think it's the duty of this body and staff in supporting of you to continue that work directly with each other. But I think that it is probably a separate pathway, because I don't know that Title IX is the right place to address the ideas you're bringing up. I think if you said, hey, I think it's important that we have additional pathways out of homelessness, that's something that we need to appreciate and work towards, but I don't know that it's right here as part of the discussion surrounding Title IX. Anyone else have anything to add on that? But that's kind of, I think, where we are as a staff.
Thanks, Division Chief. I think, Councilor Black, I think for the type of conversation that you're hungry for, absolutely appropriate. I would suggest that momentum on that conversation builds off of the study session that we had several weeks ago, and that maybe we follow up there, where we were presenting out kind of what would a system model for homelessness response look like, and what do we explore if it gets more particular down to ideas around certain forms that takes for that pillar of navigation centers and where we go alongside housing, outreach, and prevention. like, I think that's where we build and find a bit more of that momentum, and would be more than willing to engage in that way. So but I think the limitations for tonight really, as Division Chief mentioned, are really around that Title IX specifically.
And
Okay, that's helpful. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll add, it's probably somewhat confusing because it's all the same people at the table, right? Because as you start to have those discussions surrounding, like, you know, an authorized camping zone, I'm going to come in as a police department official giving some thoughts on that and some concerns I would have and some ideas we would have on how to support it, or roadblocks that may be there. So I think, to your point, it feels like we're all having to get together on all the same things, but we have to have some sort of delineation when we're talking about the different parts of the legal code. And that's why we're focusing on the Title IX elements of it tonight.
Great, that's really helpful. And I'll just close out. So again, I could ask a lot more, but I'll pause here. Thank you for all the clarification there. And yeah, I'll just say kind of, I don't know that any of these ideas are right or wrong, or I'm not ready to move forward immediately on any of them, but it would be nice to see, a kind of an analysis of these are the challenges, these are the opportunities, this is where we think it's going to help, this is some of the potential downsides to it, and including, all of the Title IX stuff and some of the stuff that maybe council has suggested as well, could be a nice, could be nice to see all of that. So thanks so much for all the research and time y'all have already put into this. Appreciate it.
Councilor Spinks.
Thank you. I really like the signs that are proposed. I think that's really good. I like the idea of encumbrance zones. Of course, not knowing any specifics of that. I have a disclaimer there. I like the encumbrance zones if, ... And to me, though, to Councillor Black's point, to me, it's kind of like a numbers game. So, for example, how many of these cooling off zones, like maybe this would be for Chris, if we had this in place now, I wonder how many cooling off zones there might exist at one time. Is that an easy question for you to answer?
I think there's a lot of kind of factors that would weigh on that. Like, there's going to be a number of things that limit, like, how many individual zones might, and largely capacity, right? How many zones can we, with our current capacity of outreach workers, really commit to that intensified outreach period for concurrently, right? Another is size of the areas, right? So there's going to be a lot of discretionary and on the ground, maybe not discretionary, but there's going to be a lot of limitations that are identified just through the operationalization of this approach. So I guess I'd maybe give it that. It's very much kind of a resource dependent question. One thing that I would say is, if we were, you say about now in this time, since Division Chief and I have been working on this challenge through weekly meetings, operational meetings of city staff, one of the things we first look at in those meetings are the mapped representation of complaints that are coming through GoGov around encampments in particular. There has been kind of a ground zero area that consistently identifies the highest number of reports coming through GoGov, right? So it would be kind of what folks might be familiar with around that 14th Sauls area, around Colfax and other areas. So probably starting where we see that kind of pattern, that type of engagement, right? And then branching out from there. But for a long time, that's been the consistent location. And then you see only kind of, it grows much more diffuse the further you go from that area.
Great, thank you. So Thank you for explaining about the resources and how we might be limited according to our resources. Because my point when I said about it's kind of a bit about math. If so many people are displaced, and as we read in the public comment, so where are they going to go? And we, to Councillor Black's point, we need to also have a place for them to go to. We can't just say, no, not here, not here, not here, not here, without having another answer for them. And so I think, again, it is appropriate to consider like the balance things, not just with resources, but the number of people and how we can house them in the NAV center and maybe a northern NAV center, and how many still, might we have. And of course, I know it fluctuates, etc. But I do like the cooling off period and in those places. There are some places, as you just mentioned, that are so problematic that, and we all get emails all the time about the encampments and how things need to be taken care of. And so, yes, I think it's totally appropriate to say, if all of these places will be no, 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 then a yes place, should be under consideration. And maybe this is the place, but not the time, maybe not the time, not the place, I don't know. But anyway, we just need to tuck that back in the back of our minds, I think. So thank you.
And ma'am, I'll add real quick. I think that's one reason we're so proud to have the Navigation Center in Lakewood and to be the first in our county to build one, see it to fruition. And, a lot of credit goes to this body and then also to Chris for heading that up, right? Because now for the first time we can say we have a 100-bed capacity facility in Lakewood to answer that question, which we didn't have 2 years ago. And that was a harder challenge. But to your point, if there is a chance to say, what about a northern campus? What about other options? I think for us, that's why as staff, we come to you with these kind of metered approaches, or, we're not asking for an all or nothing. We're not asking for something that's like, it shall ban across the city, because we know that's not reasonable, one, for the city. Also, we know it's not where the hearts of our city residents are at. They don't like that concept either. So we're trying to find this middle ground where, as I come back to the scales, we're trying to balance everything and say, we need to have some relief for those businesses and those residents who have felt it so impacted by this, but we also need to have those relief areas for those experiencing homelessness. And as I said at the last meeting, I never believe that we can enforce our way out of homelessness. So I appreciate your philosophy on that.
And if I may, for the greater group, like, this is part of the reason why I think we look back and return to those kinds of questions from the momentum that we built from that initial study session. Mm-hmm. One thing I think is really important is that we keep our lens honed on building out a response system and not just honing in on individual programs for that. So it would be an incredible challenge to match one-for-one enforcement impact to scalability of shelter bed availability, right? It's hard and unpredictable to understand how many people are arriving in unsheltered homelessness into Lakewood, and it would be hard to kind of consistently build out and grow shelter programming out to make that match. But there's some things when we take a systems perspective, there's some other ways to move in on this. So some of the things that we know about unsheltered homelessness in Lakewood, even through the last point in time, is that about a third of folks that were unsheltered in homelessness were newly homeless. And so it's not so much my interest in kind of building out more shelter beds for newly homeless people, but figuring out what do we do in the prevention space earlier to make sure that that experience of homelessness isn't happening in the first place. And how can we bring those numbers and those pressures on communities down with a variety of program interventions, right? So I really want to make sure that we give due attention to all all the things that we need to do when we're creating a homelessness response system, and not so much let these kinds of policies over-determine our investment in just one area of that. Because I could easily, bottleneck any new shelter or any new, say, sleeping area or something if there's no outflow to housing. The navigation center this week, it's kind of a bittersweet success that we have reached capacity of that facility. We are running 98 beds full in that facility, and we have a waiting list of 4 people. We entered from phase-in space into now we're managing wait list, which is a very different program, very different thing that we're doing there. But all to say is I need the full attention on all of those different pillars, from prevention to how we outreach to what we do in that navigation center space, which is pretty important, but importantly to the outflow, right? So it's really important to me that Lakewood doesn't become a city where the only thing that we can do with the resources we have and the challenges that we're faced with is imagine where a next shelter would go, right? So really hoping that we can have that kind of critical conversation as we go as well.
Councilor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with that. It won't surprise you, Mr. Connor. 2 other quick clarifications. You all did mention a permanent encumbrance zone in the presentation, and you sort of showed this hypothetical area around the NAV center. I may be missing it, and as Councilor Cruz mentioned, we did get the red line fairly recently. I don't think I see a permanent encumbrance zone defined in the draft. Is the intent to define it, or is that like a hypothetical idea that doesn't exist in the draft yet?
Oh, the latter. So this one is complex enough with hearing from you where you might want to go and asking those questions about, because again, what we don't know yet is if you want to be location based, if you prefer to be historic based, if you wanted to stick to one or the other, what that look like. So we weren't ready to put into paper on how that would read because there's so many variables there. So, and you saw as in the public speaks comment that there's some emotion surrounding the idea of a permanent encumbrance zone. And I've heard that from some of you as well. So we're at the very formative stages of that. Whereas the cooling off period and the posting one, we are in a pretty good place where we can put pen to paper, take some of your recommendations and move it pretty quickly, we think.
Got it. Just a clarifying question, not meant to just it didn't have anything behind it. On the 6-week cool off period, I mean, as I mentioned, the ordinance also says person who places, stores, maintains belongings, et cetera, during the prohibition period commits a municipal offense. Forgive me, right now, if someone is tagged, if a tenant is tagged and they're still there 24 hours later and they haven't moved, is that currently defined as a municipal offense or no?
Yeah, so if they're there for 24 hours, it's considered unlawful storage on public property after 24 hours, but we have to wait for that clock to pass and we end up doing that same 24-hour posting. So the difference here would be is if we've created the cool off zone and we've well signed it and we've outreached in advance, anyone who walks into that zone, if they set up, we can walk in immediately and say, you're in the cool off zone, you're not allowed to be here and it's immediate violation and we don't have to wait the 24 hours. And the reason for that is a lot of these businesses will go out and clean a block and we'll hear by that night at 7 p.m. they're right back there. And what happens to us is then we have to go out and post a new 24-hour notice, or we have to say, well, they left for 4 hours. So now they're not in violation of the original 24 hours and we have to wait a whole nother 24 hours. So to answer your question, yes, it's a violation, but only after 24.
Okay, so someone, in terms of the severity of the offense, it's equivalent, right? I mean, right, like the offense that someone commits right now, if they're still there 24 hours later, would be equivalent to the offense that they'd be committing if they set up an encampment within the 6-week cool-off period in one of these encumbrance zones, right?
I will have to confirm that it's different, not a different level of municipal offense, but my understanding is, yeah, it's yet another municipal offense. This isn't a county charge, and this is something we would charge in a municipal court.
And so, I mean, just for anyone listening, I mean, to put a fine point on this, no one would ever be arrested for this. I mean, it's not at that level of they might be issued a ticket or a citation that they would have to deal with in municipal court, right?
Yeah, so they would be issued a citation. They may be walked off the premise. In some severe circumstances, if they're a repeat offender, like let's say this is their 6th time joining a cool-off zone when they're not supposed to be, we may transport them down to the court if it's open Monday through Friday and have them see a judge immediately to say, why do you keep violating this? So it would follow the same cadence as any other municipal violation, which we're rarely jailing people for that, if at all.
And these tickets right now, if you're still there 24 hours later, and now if you're in this area, I mean, obviously, I'm assuming a lot. I mean, I'm going to take a wild guess that most of these people miss their court date or don't actually show up on their own volition in municipal court to process these tickets, and so they probably have a lot of outstanding tickets. What happens with that? I mean, I'm imagining if we've got a transient population that sometimes racks up multiples of these tickets over time. Like in practice right now, how does that get dealt with? I mean, I know that our municipal court has tried to be proactive and come up with opportunities to do sort of outreach and provide resources and not just be punitive. But like, can you provide a little more context on like how those tickets get dealt with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's one thing I'll say too is just because they violate the 24 hours doesn't mean they're always getting a ticket on the other side. We need that legal authority to tell them it's now time to go, right? So after the 24 hours have passed, we'll show up and say, okay, we gave you 24 hours. It's truly time to leave, and we're going to clean up the campsite after you've left. It rarely comes with a ticket. The exception to that is if we've done this to someone the 3rd time, 4th time, and we're like, you're not getting the message, right? So there's always that discretion, especially amongst our CAT officers who are doing the majority of these. Our patrol officers will help in the evenings. But then to your point, the outreach court, we actually work with the outreach court and we'll sometimes cite people into muni court and say, good news, this is an outreach court eligible offense. We want you to show up at outreach court instead of going through the normal process, because they will look at those tickets and say, what can we do to help this person to avoid violating this again in the future? And that's why it's part of our comprehensive system, if you will, where we have our navigators, we get them involved with the NAV center. If we find out that repeated violations are due to a lack of housing, we'll often try and get them in the NAV center. We'll try and get them the help they need. So to answer your question, that whole smorgasbord, and I can't think of another term right now, is available to them, whether it be community outreach court. The muni court has a high level of deference to those experiencing homelessness and really tries to work to solve the problem, not just penalize the person who's violated it. And that will continue. And that's one reason I like it being a municipal ordinance, because we have a great chief judge over there and we are all in lockstep on solving the problem. What we're asking for is the ability to have the enforcement tool, because sometimes we just have to tell people, and we need that enforcement ability behind it to make that happen.
And I'd like to just interject because I want to make sure that we're very, very clear on how we communicate. So in area enforcement, when we're saying you need to go and such, we are talking about encumbrances and personal properties. Mm-hmm. It's not that the people cannot return to a cooling off period area. It's that the property, the encumbrance, the encampment can't be reestablished in that area. So it wouldn't be that LPD would be looking out for people returning. It's more that encampment activity and behavior. I think, Division Chief, you might correct me, the only difference in that area would be that final piece about trespasses on unimproved land. That does have to do with people being within those spaces. Would I be correct in that assumption?
Yeah, so thanks for catching that. So if we did the trespassing ordinance, that means no one can be there, right? But when we're talking about these cool-off zones, sir, it's the person could literally have their camp cleaned and leave, and they can come back and stand there. They can use that sidewalk as a way to get from one place to another. They can engage in all of their lawful activities except rebuilding an encumbrance, rebuilding a campsite, and that's where they could be in violation. So in no way are we limiting people from congregating, coming to or from, working, any of those things. It's simply the act of creating an encumbrance or an encampment. And then the reason I was tying it to a specific person is where we will be looking at what's the next step are if someone keeps coming back to a street corner where we've created that cool off period and they keep creating the encumbrance, that person will be dealt with somewhat, if you will, as a repeat offender from that designation. But the mere act of that, if they come back to 14th and Wads, and that's a zone, and they're hanging out there talking to their friend, that's not a violation of anything at that point. It's sorry, go ahead.
I understand. No, thank you. This is helpful. I mean, I will just signal what Councilor Black and Councilor Sinks kind of already were, I think, getting at. I mean, look, we need to get. I think there's some questions and some details that we need to pin down. I am generally persuaded that there's a case at this point along some of these corridors for putting in place, a very sort of carefully tailored thing that looks like one of these abatement zones. I feel very strongly that to the greatest possible extent, it needs to be paired with sort of a here's where you can go mentality. I totally agree with Mr. Connor about, the importance of investing in homelessness prevention. We're doing that. We should be doing more. The importance of the NAV Center, the importance of our outreach strategy, and the importance of, a housing placement strategy and dedicated funding for, supportive housing and transitional housing and affordable housing, all of which we're working on, all of which we need to be doing more of. And this is a reminder of that. At the end of the day, if there are folks that are camping here and right now they keep coming back, there's obviously a reason for that. I understand the need to put in place, along some of these very targeted corridors, a targeted abatement zone, the way that we've been describing. But I do feel very strongly that if we're doing that, we have an obligation to do one of two things. We either have to be able to say, for every single one of those people, if they say, well, where can I go? That we have either housing or a NAV center bed for them. Or if that's not possible, and I understand right now, today, that might not be possible for every single human, we've got to be able to tell them where they can go. A designated space somewhere in the city of Lakewood where we can say, this is actually a place where you can legally set up your tent. I have real concerns about doing all this if we can't do one of those two things. So I'm all for doing this, but I just think it's incumbent on us as sort of human beings to be able to say at the end of the day, no, you're not able to camp here for 6 weeks, but here's somewhere else where you can go. And I think that's an essential part of the strategy. And I think Councillor Black and Councillor Saints were getting at that.
All right. So I've got a few questions to give staff the direction that I think you guys need tonight. And please let me know if there's any holes that we've got here. But just in general, looking at what we've received tonight, do we as a council want staff to go ahead and proceed with the updates as they were brought forward this evening? Doesn't mean we're passing anything, but we're moving towards a conversation that will get into the actual ordinance that will have the ability to be amended through that conversation. In general, are we happy to move this forward, or do we want more work as a group? And if we want to vote down like the whole thing and look at it pieces, we can definitely do that too. Councillor Black.
Just for clarification, for me, there are two pieces. There's sort of the redlined ordinance or the red line changes to Title IX that we're moving forward. And then there's these pieces related to our unhoused population that need more research and kind of definition. Are we sort of breaking those into two separate components? And should we? I don't know, but just kind of that's where my head's going.
We are. Tonight is about Title IX only. But yes, there are some other things that we need to continue to work and discuss around addressing homelessness issues. Oh, you moved there. Did that answer your question in its entirety?
I think so. What you're saying is right now we'd be voting to move forward the redlined notations in the Title IX document. And then the secondary piece, sort of staff is going to take back and kind of work on some of the details, kind of define some of the different pieces and bring that back to us separately.
I believe that is a yes. However, we do have Attorney Patrick Freeman's hand up, so we'll wait and hear from him.
So I think, so I can provide clarity on this. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. So the red line version, I wrote like the changes to Title IX. The Title IX is the public peace and safety title. So some of the stuff like the nuisance abatement zone is something where we wrote it in there, and this is enforcement authority for both like police department and park rangers. CR staff to be able to, do everything from deal with dogs off leash to, issues related to a nuisance abatement zone and a cool off period of that nuisance abatement zone and those sorts of things. And so that's why it was presented within this Title IX rewrite, is because there's a whole bunch of stuff related back to when we did the presentation on the camp case at the study session, months and months ago. And then some of the presentations that we've done on other title rewrites. And so all of the stuff that was presented here would have to have some sort of Title IX component, basically granting the authority to, CR staff, Director Connor staff or public or police department staff to be able to enforce some of this. And that's why you're getting the presentation on some of it. Some of it's in the red line, like the temporary nuisance abatement zone with the cool off period. That's in the red line. And I apologize that it didn't get up there. Apparently I'm terrible with Civic Clerk, so that's my bad. But I just want to be clear that the what we're bringing forward with this is changes to Title IX, the Public Peace and Safety Code, and what you want to see in the changes to Title IX. The other stuff that you kind of mentioned of like addressing homelessness and addressing the unhoused population by, providing more resources or zoning, so like a permanent, that would be in a different title of the code. And currently that's not something that we've worked on rewriting to present to council at this point in time. And so I think that would be kind of a council ask to head in a different direction and have staff research, look into those sorts of things, and then present it in a different section of the code. This is just the section of code on public peace and safety. Does that help answer the questions? Or did I speak for no reason?
Yeah, that helped, but you are saying, and I'm so sorry to keep belaboring this, but I want to make sure to get this right as I think about voting on it. You're saying the cool off period piece is in the Title IX document. It is a red line version of the Title IX document. Okay, that clarifies it for me.
Yes, I wrote that into the red line currently. And some of the other stuff I didn't write into the red line, knowing that we have time, as City Manager Goldstein said, we've got months where we can take feedback on this red line version and make changes to any of the red lines that are in there and anything that's not in there that you want to see. But it's currently the focus is on Title IX and what we can affect with Title IX. It's not with any of the other codes. That's not what we're presenting this evening.
And maybe to help Patrick, would it help if we explain that? So the area postings and cool off zones are part of the red line you'd be voting on. The permanent encumbrance zones were not included in there because there are so many questions, so that could be dealt with as a separate matter. But the cool off period and the area is part of that Title IX that, as we wrote it up, because we felt like we were closer to the goalpost on that, both legally and with feedback that we received from you all, in addition staff wise, if that helps.
That's super helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I'll turn it over to my colleagues, but I just, I like these ideas so much. I can't state that enough, I want to consider these ideas. They're thoughtful ideas. They're interesting ways to kind of look at the issue of unhoused. So just know my hesitancy to vote on this is way more around the fact that I just haven't had a chance to fully digest this. Not that I'm opposed to this. So please know that. And I just kind of need to think on how I would vote, knowing that the cool off period and the zones are in this version that we would be sort of voting to move forward. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. So more of, again, a process question. Is the question you're asking, Mayor, are we moving forward the conversation to council regarding Title IX as a whole? Or are you asking us if we are generally aligned with the changes being made?
Moving forward the conversation as a whole.
Okay. Okay, because I think that those are just two different questions. So I appreciate that clarification. I'll
Well,
say
let's give staff, can we hear from staff? Like, did I respond in the way that you feel like is the direction that you need? Or is there more to that response to Councilor Cruz's question?
I might just add that I think it would be helpful if we could get distinction on the permanent encumbrance zone. So maybe it's Title IX as a whole, as Mr. Freeman described it, that includes those other components. And then permanent encumbrance zones, just because so much staff work will have to go in to that particular component, it's not in there right now. If that's something council's interested, I'd like that maybe called out on its own straw poll vote.
Just to clarify, Mr. Goldstein, I guess my question is, I see a difference in a procedural vote to move this forward to talk about it, or if you all are asking if we are generally liking what is in this document, keeping permanent encumbrance zones separate. So
I think we're looking for direction as a whole. If you're okay to continue moving forward with what you've heard in staff's presentation tonight. So if there are components of what you heard from staff tonight, I think what you'll see in the red line is it, in detail articulates what staff described tonight. But if you're okay with what you heard in staff's presentation, we'll continue to do that work and move forward, likely, as an ordinance, unless you all need another study session on this, we'll start, finalizing it, doing the hard reads on it, getting everything ready to prepare it for city council vote. If there are components of it that you say, whoa, I'm not okay with that, that's helpful to know now so that we don't end up at the dais with you saying, hey, I want you to scrap this, because that will likely have ripple effects throughout the entire Title IX update, depending on what you want to amend. A lot of it's cleanup, probably the vast majority of it's cleanup. And then there's these new components that were highlighted tonight. Does that help?
yeah, I will say, I think this update is important. I think we need to move this update forward. And one, there are things that have been presented that I think I've indicated already that I'm uncomfortable with. And then also, again, we just got this. So there's gonna have to be changes to some of this, or there's gonna be questions that come up, because there's a lot of stuff in here that we get a lot of questions from people about: e-bikes, fireworks, animals, right? There's a lot of stuff in here.
It's huge. Yeah.
So if the indication is that it would be most helpful to staff for us to go to the dais with a fully baked ordinance, then I'm going to be a no on this question.
I don't know that we need a fully baked ordinance, but I do think if there's something that you're seeing right now where you're like, I'm already a hard no on that, that's helpful for us to know so that we can do a little work. And as a body, not as an individual, for your sake, Mayor.
Do you want that now, Mayor, or do you want us
Perfect.
to just vote on the broader question?
Let's get through all the hands up, and then we're going to start figuring out where yeses and nos reside. Do you have more questions? Okay, thank you. Councilor Ryan and Councilor Sinks.
Thank you. And this whole discussion has been very helpful for me. And I think Councilor Cruz has really hit upon the nerve that it's kind of been bugging me through all of this. Is a lot of times when in these study sessions we're doing the straw poll is, hey, do we like this? And I guess I could say that the general concepts seem like they make sense to me in a lot of ways, but there's no way that I'm in the position to be able to vote one way or another as to whether I like this as is. I mean, I honestly think that this is something that deserves a workshop at some point in time to be able to go through specific language at some point when we've had a chance to meet with our community and discuss some of these issues And frankly, to understand, I mean, this session has helped me understand a lot more what was happening. I tried to read through as much as I could, as quickly as I could, but as someone else pointed out, this is more than just the homeless issues. There's all sorts of things going on in here, and where to land the focus is difficult. So if we are asked to vote to say we like this enough where it should end up to be voted on the city council dais, making maybe some changes there, I don't think it's ready, and I wouldn't be in support of that, even though I think there's a lot to like here at first blush. But frankly, I need to know more and need to understand more, and I think community needs to know more about how we're approaching this, because this may be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I'm not there yet.
Councilor Singh.
Thank you. Maybe another process question. So there are many pages that have no red lines, and I remember hearing Mr. Freeman say, you know, maybe something's not even there, not done, that we would like to see. So I wonder what that process would be. And I'm especially thinking of the noise ordinance that some of you might remember that I brought forward, wow, who knows how long ago. And as well as some neighbors and constituents that also are concerned about that. And there's no red line on that. And so what would be a process like? How much in the future would something be revisited, or should we just knock it out, you know, at this time and do all of Title IX, all red line and approve everything? So help me understand that.
Well, and that can be one of council's decisions tonight. If there were sections that we feel comfortable with, we could move forward some, but maybe not noise, and we spend more time on noise. So that is one option that we could look at. Understandably a little hard. We just got the ordinance, so details may be a little challenging, and it seems to me like we might be moving in the direction of actually having more of a conversation, maybe a workshop, as Councilor Ryan had mentioned. So does staff have a response to Councilor Sinks, or we've got two more hands up and we can maybe kind of circle back and figure all this out?
I don't know that I have a specific response to the noise ordinance or the items you've raised previously, but I think as far as a process response, I think it sounds like council is leaning towards having a little more time with this. We're not interested in rushing this through. We want you to be comfortable. We want the community to be comfortable. Staff's been working on this for years, literally years. So there's a lot of things that need to be updated for statutory reasons to bring our municipal code in accordance with state code. But I think we also need, there's some creative components in here of trying to address the things that we've heard from council. We need you all on board with that. And I think we're happy to continue the conversation rather than rushing to an ordinance and a vote on that.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sharzai, you haven't had the floor yet, and then Councilor Lowe.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. And Mr. Goldstein, I appreciate you just sort of signaled this again. There has been a tremendous amount of work that's gone over many years on this topic. I think I would be reinforcing the point that Councilor Ryan made. There are some things in here that are just like no-brainers. Like, obviously, we need to modernize our language to reflect the world that we live in. Obviously, we need to update the statutory alignment in places that we should. And I know that staff's been tracking that. Like, those are things that I'm willing to signal, yes, of course, a willingness to move forward. But some of this stuff that we need to dig deeper on, I appreciate that staff's sharing a willingness to have a workshop or whatever that looks like, because I do think that some of this needs to be chunked out in different ways. This is tremendous amount of policy changes. And some of this, I know we were introducing when we had the recent conversation with Mr. Connor around some of our homeless response and updates on that. But because this is such a significant shift, I would be very open, understanding that we have a lot on our schedule over the next coming months. But if we need to wait towards later in the year to really give this the time and attention, we've said it a number of times, like just having this is a prolific document. And so having more time to be able to sit with it. I want to honor Councilor Sink's desire to handle the noise ordinance. Like these are things that I think can all be sort of pieced into this. And so I just wanted to signal what my vote would be, like a willingness to keep the conversation going, but not like a thumbs up as is.
Councilor Lowe.
This idea has emerged in slightly more nuanced form, I think, earlier in the discussion. But I'm going to ask it even more starkly. I mean, maybe I can direct this at either the mayor or the city manager, the interim city manager. Hypothetically, what if council said, "Okay, we're comfortable moving forward with these temporary abatement zones, perhaps with a couple of tweaks, but only if it's combined with a designated public camping place, even if that has to happen completely separately and outside of Title IX." So I understand it doesn't happen in Title IX. I understand it's a separate thing, but I'm not saying this is what council's saying. But what if council said that? Said we aren't willing to pass that unless we also get to concurrently sort of designate or vote or get an update on a separate public space being made available somewhere in the city of Lakewood where people can go. Is that a thing that could happen? Is the answer yes, that could happen? Is the answer it could happen, but it would take us 6 months to figure out how to do that? Is the answer it would take us 9 months to figure out how to do that? Like, what would that mean in terms of the process?
I think they're both good policy questions and within the realm of council's responsibility. That said, I would hate to hold all of Title IX up because I think it is a longer runway for your desire or council's desire to see some sort of designated camping space within the city. I think that's a longer runway to figure out. There's significant challenges. I think Mr. Connor has articulated some of those to the group and to you all individually. So if you're not okay moving forward with the components of Title IX that might impact that, then I might propose we move forward with Title IX without those components rather than holding up the entire thing. But that's a policy discussion that you all will need to have.
Look, I think Councilor Cruz, Councilor Ryan, and others are entirely correct that there, and Councilor Sherzai, that there is a massive amount of this code, and I think we clearly need more time to digest like some aspects of this before we can give an up or down vote tonight. I would suggest that, the specific red line on these temporary nuisance abatement zones, that's a page of text, and I think the idea is relatively, is fairly straightforward. Important, not without nuance, but straightforward, and we've gotten a pretty detailed breakdown of that concept tonight. And I do want to acknowledge there's some people that feel very activated about this on either side of the issue, but we are hearing from a lot of stakeholders in Lakewood that are really eager to see this change made. So I do want to acknowledge and name that. Just speaking for myself, I would, with the questions I've raised, a couple of the details around a guaranteed sort of minimum period of time codified in the ordinance, where notice and signage happens before the abatement period goes into effect. I probably would be comfortable as one vote of 11 moving that piece forward and not waiting, another 3 or 6 or 9 months. But only if it was combined with at least a clear pathway to what I articulated earlier, which is there's somewhere for people to go. And maybe that means a process for figuring out a public camping site, or maybe that means, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I really do feel like it has to be paired with this is how we're kind of process mapping over the next 6 to 12 months, a way of making sure that we have a better answer to that question than we have now.
Yeah, and I hear that. I don't know that I can commit that we can get that done in 3 months, 6 months. I think there's just a whole lot of challenges that come with what you all are proposing. And and we can have that conversation. We could do a study session or a workshop on that, but it's not an insignificant thing. And I don't want to try and just toss it in the conversation on this Title IX stuff that we'll vote on this if we get this. And I just don't think we're really ready for that yet. So if there are components to Title IX that don't make sense to you without that other piece being figured out, then we probably need to have that conversation separate from me saying that we're going to be in a position where we can deliver on that. Because the conversations I've had with staff, there are a lot of concerns that would need to be addressed, and it's just not going to happen as quickly as I think you all want.
Can I add?
I think that's a very helpful and clarifying answer, Mr. Goldstein. I frankly appreciate that.
Chief Alice, you had something?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think what I was going to mention to kind of wrap the concept up is that's what, as a staff, we were trying to do. Staff intent here was to say, hey, we're doing the Title IX rewrite. Here's some what we think are pretty well-baked ideas that we want to bring you now, because as you mentioned, Councilor Lowe, you're hearing it from your constituents. So we didn't want to miss an opportunity to bring an idea forward. I also feel that, that's why we left permanent encumbrance zones off of it, because we said we know that one's not well baked enough to even have this discussion. So we tried to come up with the things that we felt you would have a comfort level in. But to the city manager's point, if it's going to be something where it's not, I also just as a public safety representative don't want to see the whole code get held up over this. So whatever this body decides, we'll move forward on. But I share the city manager's feelings.
Okay, so moving us forward, it sounds like let's talk for a minute first about the permanent encumbrance zones. Is council willing, comfortable to move that conversation forward? With that, go ahead, please. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I think I see 6 yeses, 5 no's.
Yep.
Okay. So question then for staff. Do you need any additional information from us other than we would like to see more information? And maybe some of that question might be to the no votes. Are there things maybe that you guys would like to see that would make you feel more comfortable in moving that conversation forward? Councilor Cruz.
I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I understand and certainly don't want to hold up many of the updates to Title IX that are necessary in the shorter term, some of which do pertain to homelessness, like the non-public City of Lakewood properties having similar rules to private properties. That being said, I do think that we've seen what this looks like in practice when we have had hot zones, like when we did this around the navigation center previously, where instead of getting emails from Iber neighbors, I got emails from Two Creeks neighbors. It's similar to Aviation Park. Like we've seen how this goes. What this is going to do without the understandably complicated conversation about where to put people is just going to make this somebody else's problem in a new place. And we have not answered that question. We cannot answer that question in Title IX, but these things have to go together if we're going to make this monumental of a change. That's also going to subject us to significant legal risk, as other jurisdictions have seen. And so to me, those conversations have to be together if we're going to have this conversation on permanent encumbrance zones.
So we can separate, from this moment forward, let's separate incumbent zones from the rest of Title IX. So understanding that any additional conversations around the encumbered zones are going to be a little bit more focused around just that topic alone, but looking at Title IX without that, I guess we haven't really voted on that yet, but message received from many of you, like, we don't need to bunch all this together. So, Councilor Cruz, did that address what you're talking about?
Yeah, because you were just voting on the encumbered zone piece, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so staff, any additional questions that you need answered from us on the encumbrance zone idea?
No, I think if we saw correctly, it was 6-5 to just move forward with the discussion. So what then we would do is bring to you various options. Because as we said before with the slide, we said there's a lot to consider here. So is it location based? Is it area based? How do you define that? I definitely hear Councilor Cruz's concerns about just displacing the problem to another neighborhood right next door. And that's part of the reason we wanted to discuss this with you. So I think the way we would move forward is now we would say, you at least want to hear more about it. And so we'll bring up some ideas of what could or couldn't look like. And what we'll do is we'll take those ideas to legal first to just make sure from the start, is there any non-starters like that we have to avoid, and we can bring that to you. Does that sound appropriate, Mayor?
Yep. Okay. So I think where we are is, I mean, Title IX idea of moving forward has come up. We talked explicitly earlier, it was voiced that we didn't necessarily need a study session, but then I feel like maybe that might have shifted a little bit. Let's do this. So thumbs up if you are comfortable moving it forward to again, we are not doing the encumbrance zones. This is just Title IX. Do we want to move it forward? The question is ultimately going to be moving it forward to first reading, second reading, or instead moving it forward to like a workshop setting. So let's go first. If you would feel more comfortable moving forward to a workshop setting prior to it coming back to us for first reading, please thumbs up. Workshop.
Unanimous.
Looks like every 11 yeses. Okay, so we will move forward as a workshop. Councilor Lowe did bring up the abatement zone and having a minimum floor. I think that one would be a good one for us to at least get an appetite from Councilor. So I don't know, Councilor Lowe or maybe Mr. Connor, if you guys want to say a few words just about that specifically to help us understand what we are voting on there. Do we want a minimum? Do we not?
Chris, feel free, or I'm happy to.
Yeah,
One second, we've got Attorney Patrick Freeman is hanging his hand up, so I'm guessing he has something to say about it.
Just real quickly, since you all just voted to workshop, any changes that you want to make to the red lines of Title IX, we can make in the workshop.
Thank you. Councilor Lowe?
I mean, yeah, we could, I think it's a fair point. We could decide this in the workshop. If you want to take a poll now, I think that's a fine idea too. Like, I mean, the question is just, do we want to be explicit that there's a minimum period of time, whether it's 24 or 48 hours in ordinance, that the signs go up, that the notices go up before one of these, like, let's say we were going to do this temporary abatement zone as spelled out. Do we want to add a minimum period of time that the posting required has to occur before the abatement period can begin? Yes or no? Yes means yes, you think there should be a minimum period of time of some sort defined in the ordinance.
Perfect. Do we want to decide that tonight? Does everybody feel like we understand it enough or not so much? See some head shakes. So maybe what we can do is come back in our workshop that we've now decided that we want to have. And staff, could you give us an understanding of what the implications might be one way or the other?
100%.
Okay, perfect. I think that feels to me like we've resolved the things that we needed to resolve for tonight, with the understanding that we're moving forward with this workshop. We now have the red line. Everyone can look at it. Please do not wait. As we've discussed, these are big topics. Community will want to weigh in. So this, as we're getting ready to go through the next cycle of board meetings, this is a really good thing to start bringing up to folks. Do we have, though, before I move on to committee reports and like turn this topic, close this topic up for tonight, do we have any other, like staff, do you have anything that you wanted to say before we move on?
No, I'll just close with thank you for hearing us out. Thank you for going through the presentation with us. This is a massive process that staff's been through, and so we appreciate the thoughtfulness and your commitment to move forward with the workshop to get this to an endpoint that betters our community. So thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Nystrom?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying point. In looking, just skimming the red lines and some of the materials before, in terms of e-bikes, it looks like you're changing the definitions and qualifications on different e-bikes, but in terms of enforcement, that's going to require a different ordinance. Is that correct? Because this has become a big problem. There's a lot of damage being done. There's a lot of kids riding e-bikes down the middle of the road, popping wheelies, all kinds of things. And, kids have already been killed doing that. So it's a big concern I hear a lot about. So I just want to clarify that piece.
There is some enforcement mechanism related to e-bikes that's in this Title IX. There are not changes to it. The definitional changes line up with the enforcement as it's already currently written. If there were changes that would want to be made to that enforcement mechanism, I also know that Title X is traffic. So issues related to e-bikes that might fall into the traffic code, that would be a separate title rewrite.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We will go ahead and close her down. Thank you, everybody. And before we adjourn this evening, do we have any committee reports tonight? All right. Oh, Councilor Lowe.
HPC met last week. We voted 6-0 to move forward an affordable housing ordinance for council's consideration, and we'll be discussing it as a council later this year. And we do not have an HPC meeting in September.
Any other committees? Mayor Pro Tem Sharzai.
Yes, screening committee is meeting next week to interview some applicants for the planning commission. And there is also an opening right now. We have a vacancy and the ad hoc committee exploring police transparency and oversight. And that application closes on Friday. So if folks are interested in applying for that vacancy.
Thank you. Councilor Nystrom.
The sustainability committee will be meeting next Friday. We'll be talking a little bit about decarbonization in buildings and some other topics. And the meeting is at 12:30.
All right. Thank you. And with that, no further business, we'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Study session at 8:59 p.m. Thank you, everybody.